Hello and welcome to The Up Move. I am Anthea, and on the call with me I have Ify, and we also have a special guest today, Awet. So today we're basically here because we've had a series of conversations in various groups and forums where we've had a lot of news shared recently about, young children being abducted, potential kidnappings, potential, sexual abuse and things like that. And it's kind of gotten us to a point where we're just asking the question, what is going on? And following on from sharing some of this information, we've had a lot of interesting responses. So in some of the groups, what's actually happening is that's triggering traumatic memories for people, that where further discussion is happening about why is this happening, who is involved, how were they raised, and why doesn't anyone know that this person is this way inclined. It's actually triggering people, because what we're realizing is that there is a lot of normality in terms of the experiences that women have had with men following them, sexually abusing them, verbally abusing them, and all sorts of things. So we just thought we'd come on to this call and just, share some of the experiences and the information that we've got, and also just give our opinion about this. And, ultimately what we want to know is, what do you think? Why do you think this is happening? So when you do get to see this, please hashtag replay in the comments, and also please share your thoughts. Let us know what's going on, what you think we can do, and how we can help. So to kick us off, where I know you were saying something just beforehand, if you want to kind of continue from there.
I think I was kind of alluding to consent.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about why young men and young boys, or even older men, feel entitled. That, when they're speaking to women or trying to chat them up, that when they're not getting that response, they're not getting a yes, that they then feel that they can continue pursuing that lady or that young girl.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I think we need to have serious conversations about consent. I don't even think people agree on what consent looks like. I know that even amongst women, there is no one single agreement. I mean, I was referring to Jada Pinkett's Red Table Talk, and they were having like a very heated debate about consent. And what really struck me was that even amongst us women, we don't agree on what consent should look like on a practical level. So I think that conversation really needs to be had at schools, within the homes. One thing that Jada Pinkett said that was really interesting is that she'd had this conversation with Will Smith, with her husband, and he was saying that men are trained to be hunters.
Mm-hmm.
And for them, a no doesn't necessarily mean a no, because his mind is on, how do I get her to say yes?
Right.
So, and that's really scary for me, because if young boys are being trained by society, by music, which, there are so many different influences. It's not just the home. It's not just the neighborhood they've grown up in.
Mm-hmm.
If society is telling them, you are a hunter, you must go out there and hunt until she says yes, then we're in serious trouble.
Right.
So for me, that conversation about consent really needs to be had from a very young age.
So that's interesting. What were the different definitions of consent? Because I clearly must just be a black and white person. Like, consent, if I say no, like,
no
mate,
means no.
Right?
Yeah, I hear you. I think it wasn't that they were saying that there isn't, like, no does not mean no. I think there was this example that Jada gave, which is going to a woman going to a hotel room with a guy does not mean she wants to sleep with him.
Right.
Okay.
And I think her mother was like, well, come on, you're going to a hotel room with a guy, you're saying yes to sex. And Jada and some of the other ladies were like, actually, no. It means that maybe it just means I just want to go to a hotel room and I think we're going to chill and listen to music and drink, but it doesn't mean I'm consenting to sex.
Mm-hmm.
And I completely agree with Jada.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously for different women, it's as soon as you go up the elevator to that hotel room, be prepared to have sex, which I think is completely wrong, because then where does it stop,
Exactly.
Yeah, go ahead, Anthea.
Yeah, no, I was just
too like passionate about this.
No, it's, do you know what? We could literally speak for hours about this, because so the thing that I find really interesting about that is that if the idea is that because a woman is going to a hotel, there is an expectation. So what we need to be asking is, why is that the expectation? Why is there no variation to that? And is it just other women and also men who have that expectation? Because if you are, because sometimes, again, and also it depends on your age, it depends on your circumstance. Sometimes it depends who you live with. You know, you don't necessarily want to bring somebody home. You may just want to go and spend time with them alone. You don't want to do that outside. So yeah, okay, so let's get a hotel. But the thing is with consent in that sense is that until you ask the question, or until we make an agreement that this is what's going to happen, you should not assume anything.
Exactly.
And I have the right to say no at any given time.
And I have the right to change my mind at any given time.
Exactly. I think that's the important thing.
Exactly.
And I think the other thing that needs to be considered, and this is what, again, I spoke about the generational thing. This is what we need to be teaching, not just our sons, but our daughters as well, that you can say no at any point. It doesn't matter. You can have your clothes off, you know, you can say no at any point. But then on the flip side, that the other person needs to be able to have control of themselves to be able to step back.
Right.
You understand?
Yeah.
Not that, no, we're too far, you know, we're going to go ahead. They need to have control and be able to step back. And I think the one thing that we want to call out here as well is that we know it's not all men. We're not saying all men,
of course,
are like this. We need, I feel like there needs to be, and I know that there's a lot of groups out there that do help to mentor like young boys. You've got like 100 Black Men, you know, there's a lot of mentoring sort of clubs and so on that goes on. My brother does one every week. So there's a lot of men that are going out there that are helping to guide these young boys, and we need more of that. But we need like the raw conversations to actually, you know, talk about this. It's not, you know, we shouldn't be pussyfooting around it. It's things that we know actually happen. And if we think back to when we were young and the things that used to happen when we were young, we know that already some of them are starting to build up these, you know, these sort of assumptions that this is the way it is. You know, I'm just going to go and do this. You know, I'm entitled to this, or, you know, we're already here, let's just do it. So it's really important that we have that representation from men as well, that they're able to, you know, just help to talk boys through this, and, you know, bring in that I don't know the right words, but, you know, I'm thinking of a film, I want to say it's Love and Basketball, but I think he asked her, I know they slept together and they were young, but he asked her before, you know, they were getting down to it, and he was like, you know, are you sure? And she said, and it's having that, it doesn't matter how old you are, but, you know, being that sort of gentleman that you can ask as well. Some girls might be saying no in their heads and they're not brave enough to say it out.
Yeah.
You know, they might be thinking, oh, it's too late for me to say no. So we need to be educating on both sides to be saying, you know, it's okay to ask, you know, are you okay? Like, is this what you want to do or not? And for girls to feel confident enough to say, no, I can say no.
Yeah. I'm really glad that you mentioned that, Ify, because Jada Pinkett, she's my reference point today. She also had, I think this was another episode where she had a gentleman. I don't know him, but apparently he's like, I think a famous athlete or some sort of celebrity. And his campaign is all about consent and about ensuring that men are asking women as they are, like, for him, it's okay. It's not, you're not a pussy, or you're not effeminate, or it doesn't mean that you don't have game if you stop every so often, not just once, but every so often, just, is this okay for you? Does this feel comfortable for you? And I think that's really important, particularly in the Black community. I mean, this athlete is an African-American gentleman. I think it's really important for young Black men, or Black men in general, just to see that, and for them to, because I think there's this, I don't know if you ladies agree with me, but with the influence of music and just the way Black men are stereotyped in this culture, that they're, you know, hypersexual and that they've got to have game and all of this nonsense. I think there is a pressure for them to appear as though that they have game all the time. So for me, it's really important to have men like that who are out there in the public platform who are saying, no, it's okay to keep, not just to ask if it's okay, but to continually ask for consent. And then there's no ambiguity on either parties.
Yeah.
And they don't get trapped in, they don't get trapped in it either, because again, it's like, so like what you're referring to also comes around like the whole status thing. So there's like a level of status attached by how many girls you get and all of those kind of things. And especially when you're famous, it's kind of, there's like a more of an entitlement. I think we've used that word already, but it's around entitlement. I'm famous, I have money, I'm entitled.
Yes.
No, you're not. We still have to have respect, because if we respect the other person, then we would want to ensure that they are as comfortable in this situation as we are. And, you know, something, Ify, you mentioned earlier, again, just tying this all back to the whole idea of consent. So my thing is that as women, you know, we're much more aware of situations. We're much more aware of vibes and energy and how we get approached, the tone somebody speaks to us, the kind of words they use, etc. But again, if we go back to the start of this conversation, it was triggered by the things that happen to these young children. Now, I'm 10, I'm 12, I'm 13. The only thing on my mind is seeing my best friends at school today. And inset, you know, all I'm doing is trying to leave my house and get to school. So in those situations where they're essentially, I guess, you know, Awet, what you were saying about being hunters, they're being preyed on.
Yes.
And I know that doesn't just happen to children, that happens to women as well. They're being preyed on. You know, what is it that makes, and I know I'm never going to get the answer to this, I don't even know why I'm asking, but what is it that makes somebody, you know, a child is to be nurtured, a child is to be protected, a child, you know, to take someone that, you know, has been given life, is still growing, still developing, still trying to figure out the world, and your only motive is to abduct them, is to rape them, is to, you know, to do all of these things. I just can't get my head around that, because even if that child was completely terrified and understood what consent was, they never would have given it.
Yes.
So at what point, you know, at what point is consent even relevant when it comes to a child? That's just a no-go area.
Yeah.
You know, so what is it? So what is actually happening? Because I honestly, I just couldn't get my head around why this grown man, I think he was like 25 or something like that, would be approaching, I think the girl was like 12 or something like that. You know, I just don't understand that mentality.
Younger, wasn't she? I mean, either way, 12 is just, she's still a baby.
Child,
Yeah.
right?
I don't think that there's anything in that we're going to understand. You understand that we are of sane mind. Like, he clearly, you know, there's something wrong there, and you know, it's not something any normal person would do. That's a child that can't defend themselves.
Right.
You know, I don't know if we're talking about the same situation, but the one that I'd heard about, it was lucky that there was somebody else there that was filming, and that was following, and that was saying, do you know this man?
Yes.
What if that person wasn't there? What if that person wasn't there? So, you know, it's a very scary thought. But to me, there isn't the thought from the person, whoever it is that's abducting or whatever, as to the well-being or care of the child. It must be a very selfish thought. All they're thinking about is what they want. This is what I want, and I'm going to go out and get it. And you know, regardless of it, if it's an innocent child or whatever, there is no sense of guilt or anything there. They're just going out to get. They're just preying on someone. You know. So yeah, I just this all comes back to sort of, you know, the whole thing that, you know, we started talking about way back with the upmeet, that we need to be there for each other. There's always going to be, you know, people that are just gonna, you know, they're just thinking about themselves, they're just thinking about their self-gratification, whatever that is, and you know, whoever is going to satisfy that, they're just thinking about that. but we need to be able to look out for ourselves. You know, I'm very thankful that someone was there for that girl, but how many hundreds of other children or girls, or even boys, you don't know how many other people have gone through that, and there was no one there.
6 boys will be sexually assaulted before they're 18 years old. 1 in 4 girls, 1 in 6 boys. So, boys are not immune to this. And I think, Ify, just following on from what you said, I think in this case, we know that this guy had a mental health issue. So maybe he's an extreme case because he'd been sectioned several times. I don't know if the papers are correct. So maybe it's hard for us to get into the mind of a seriously disturbed person and try to understand where they're coming from, because I think it will be impossible. However, there are children being sexually abused in their own homes, by family members, by neighbors, by people they know, by teachers. So it's not just these. I think he's just an extreme case, and we're using that because I think this is what triggered the conversation and what really scared us. And luckily, it happened to be recorded, and someone was there to help the kid. But I think we need to not get sidetracked by that. And I mean, the numbers say it for themselves. 1 in 4 girls, 1 in 6 boys will be sexually assaulted before they're 18 years old. What is going on there? And yes, we know they're selfish, because you'd have to be very selfish to violate a child like that.
Right.
But I think in order to answer that question, there are just so many layers to it, Anthea.
Trauma
there's
is,
patriarchy, there's powerlessness. The more powerless a person feels, or a community feels, the more likely they will prey on someone else in order to overcompensate for that powerlessness.
Right.
So where we have high rates of unemployment, we have major disparities in wealth in a society, you start to see these things increasing in number. So there are just so many layers to these things. And it's like, for me, sometimes I think the overwhelming thing is, how do you get to the root cause of these things when you're just one person, or one group of women, or just one small community?
This is definitely the challenge that we've had. And I mean, if we've had so many of these conversations, and I think this is enough. I think we like to try to help everybody because that's our nature. But sometimes if we can just help one person, and someone else can help one person, someone can share information that helps another person, it's that kind of domino effect. And so I think, the main thing is having the conversation, knowing that this is going to be difficult, it's going to be challenging, it's likely to trigger. I think literally everybody needs counselling, and especially after this pandemic, everybody needs counselling. What could push some of these people to actually act in this way is because of this pandemic, being locked in, not having that social interaction, not having the ability to communicate feelings and thoughts, and then let outside. And then the only way that comes out is, like if you said, it's that self-gratification. I need to get this clear in my head. I need to do something that's good for me, and this is the result of it. But if we have the conversation, if someone overhears this conversation and they know of a support center or a support group or some, neighborhood watch, like I've never really been a part of that, but why is it that we don't feel safe? Where are people? Where are, everyone's suffering alone. We're not talking to each other because we're too scared that the person we're talking to is going to be someone who's going to prey on us. We just need to find a way to build relationships. We need to connect with people. We need to be able to trust each other. We need to be able to go to bat for each other. We need to be able to look out for each other. Like the whole thing with the filming, how many people would have actually stepped in? And this is not even to suggest even remotely that someone not stepping in is necessarily a bad thing, because we don't know their experience. They could have tried to step in and save someone before, and then, someone got stabbed or someone died from that incident. But like, we literally don't know. We're so scared of, and because we're so detached, I think, from people, we're not as compelled to step in when we see things that don't quite look right. Thankfully, in that situation,
because for me, I am somebody who is already hypervigilant. So when I see something happening, sometimes I need to remind myself to think before I act or say something. So when I see people who don't step in, then for me, it's, my goodness, like, how could you not? And I'm reminding myself that you're so right. There are people who've experienced things before. Maybe they have social anxiety. Maybe this is a trigger for them. Or maybe they really just genuinely don't know what to do.
Right.
But I think, sadly, so many of us are too detached, particularly living in a big city where, you know, it's very individualistic and it's, well, you know, it's not, I don't know them, so it has nothing to do with me. And I think like this whole neighborhood watch thing could be a really good idea.
Yeah, I think it's all about community.
Very
Definitely.
much. If we
That's what we need. If we had that real sense of community, you wouldn't do something because you know Auntie TT down the road is gonna go tell, you know, you know what I mean?
She gonna tell.
Yeah.
She's got. If we had that sense of community and everybody, you knew that everybody's looking out for everybody else. There's some sort of connection. You know, people would think twice. You know, obviously, let's put aside the mental health side of things because that's slightly different. But in terms of intentionally going out to do something, people would think twice. So, you know, I think definitely the conversation that we're having, you know, hopefully, you know, someone can hear this and it can help to resonate. I do also think the other thing I was thinking as we were talking was education. I think is key. There is actually resources out there that help to guide, especially parents, on how to talk to your children about what's right and what's wrong in terms of if you know you don't have secrets from mummy and daddy. If somebody touches you dead, like this is not right, you have to let us know. So there's guides out there. I'll have to look for the link and look at some things that we can share. But it's having those conversations, and we need to be better at making sure that our children are comfortable talking to us. You know, this is where the generational thing comes in. So if something has happened, that our children feel comfortable coming and saying, "Oh, this happened, but I don't really think it was right." You know, just so that there is more of that element of, no, this isn't, even though it's common, this is not right. You know, this shouldn't be happening, or you know, you shouldn't have acted like that. And there needs to be more of that. We need to have more of those kind of conversations. I think I'm coming at it from a parent angle, but I'm thinking
But
of
it's still
the
valid.
levels, you know, like in 20, 30 years time when, you know, the youngers are grown up, do we still want to be hearing about this sort of thing? Or even worse, we don't know what it's going to turn into.
No,
You know?
definitely not, because remember that the same way, and I'm not sure if this was on camera or not, but we were talking about, you know, when we used to go out back in the day and someone would, you know, guys would come and talk to us or whatever, and they would, you know, they might get rejected, but then they start acting, you know, starting verbal abuse and all of those kind of things. These are the ones who've had kids. You know, they're the ones who are telling these younger children in their behavior how to treat women as well. So that lack of respect is also generational. And just interestingly, because I remember I was looking at this earlier, so there was a survey that was done on YouGov, and 1 in 3 women consciously take steps to avoid being sexually assaulted. So if you think that, you know, in a normal day, whatever you plan to do, one of the things that you must include in your plan are steps to avoid being sexually assaulted. So this is something that as a woman you're immediately burdened with, because essentially what that says is that I don't feel safe where I live. I don't feel safe around, you know, men. And again, just to reiterate what's already been said, this is not targeting all men. We know that there are some really good men out there. The problem is that it's normally the negative side of things that gets highlighted. But for women, 1 in 3 women, and this is not Black specific, this is against all races, but 1 in 3 women are literally planning their weekends, their evenings, so that they don't get sexually assaulted. You know, we should be planning, how do we get home, or, you know, what are we going to wear, and, you know, where are we going to go? But that gets included in your plan. So that will immediately put you on the defensive. And so when you interact with certain people, you're not looking at them as people to a degree, especially men. You're trying to figure out, are you a predator? Are you going to try and rape me today? I need to make sure that I don't give too much eye contact, because that might lead you to think a certain thing. And then going back to, you know, your whole point about the consent, is that if we then decide later on to meet up or whatever, can I feel safe meeting you at your home? You know, because when we were younger, we would go and meet someone wherever we were. It didn't really matter now. But now it's kind of like, well, no, we can't do that because you don't know how many friends he's got at the house. You don't know what he's planned for you. You know,
and
we
also,
just
if he
don't
does
know.
have something planned for you, then the question is, what were you doing in his home? Or what were you wearing? Why would
and
you
then you get shamed as a woman because you weren't smart enough to know that this person was a predator. But the whole point is that, so what do we do as women? Do we try to trust? Because there's only so much vigilance and caution that we can enact before we literally are just in solitude. We will only speak to women. We will only go places with women. We will not interact with, you know, it can't get to that point. It has to come back to community and being able to be around other people and feel safe.
Yeah. And it's difficult. And I think it has an effect on your emotional, mental well-being when you're that hypervigilant. But I think the numbers, 1 in 3 women, I'm not surprised by that. In fact, I think that sounds really conservative.
Yeah.
Because I think what they're trying to say is it's not women are hypervigilant to being, say, raped. That's the extreme case. It's just being harassed or being talked to a certain way or made to feel uncomfortable.
Right.
And I wouldn't be surprised if it's more than 1 in 3 women, because we do it so subconsciously. It's become almost second nature, I think. Like, do I want to go and sit there at the back of the bus where it's really crowded? Or is it safer for me? Like, we're making those calculations very quickly to the point where I don't even realize I'm making those calculations. But I know I am, because I've got to think about my safety. But the hypervigilance is really unhealthy, because you can only do it up to a point before it starts to take a toll. And I mean, this is the case for not just women, but minorities in general. Just hypervigilance just breeds, it's the connection that you start to lose with human beings, because like you said, Anthea, you stop seeing that person as a person.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging. I think, I don't know, it just hurts my heart. It just, this whole, because even just as I suppose as a correlation, like when I used to go out 17, 8, okay, let's say 18, because obviously I was a good girl. I didn't go out before my age. So when I was 18,
I pretend that I don't know any different.
I was when I was legal, and I used to go out to the club. It was interesting because I would get on a night bus. This is from central London. I would get on the night bus. I would sit where I sat. I got home, never had any problems. Now, over double that age, if I go out, I'm literally planning, okay, so where am I coming from? What bus am I getting? How familiar am I with that bus? Do I even want to entertain that? Do you know what? Forget it. I'm going to drive. Or I'm going to, you know, figure out a cab situation. And even then, we used to get cabs like from Trafalgar Square. They would just be around and they'd be like, okay, you'd haggle a rate to take you where you needed to go.
Well, this is showing our age, Anthea. This is showing our age.
I know.
But this is the interesting thing, is that there was a time where this was normal, where we were carefree. You know, even in my own personal experience, I've been mugged before.
Wow.
And that for me was definitely a turning point, because I was scared in the day. You know, it happened at night, but I was scared in the day. It just changed everything for me. I was no longer carefree. And it's not because I was carefree because I was ignorant. You know, I was still making sure I was safe and stuff like that, but I didn't have the same level of anxiety attached to it.
Yeah.
So everything then became, let me not look at anybody. I literally went through a period where I just did not make eye contact with anybody. I didn't ever take my phone out.
Yeah.
I just went through this whole thing. And, you know, even thinking back, I probably should have had counselling for that, because that was a really difficult time. And I was in uni as well. And literally my grades suffered and all of that. And so when I think about it, it's like, it's that kind of invasion of personal space, to have this thought that somebody could invade my personal space. People no longer respect that boundary. And when people no longer respect that boundary, there are like all bets are off. You have no idea how far somebody could go. And that fear alone is probably why people are taking these steps to not do certain things, not go out to a certain time. Pandemic season, in a way, has probably helped some people be able to go out, because it's not about I need to go somewhere and be trying to find transport at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's I can go out and still be back before 9, because people are having to adapt. So, but the fact is we shouldn't have to. If we do that, it should be a choice, because I want to come home at 9, not because if I stay out too late, my friend who I went with is no longer going to be there. I'm scared about who I might meet on my way home.
Yeah.
So it's just, how do we get that? We've talked about trust, we've talked about community, we've talked about building relationships. How do we start it?
I think from this conversation, the only thing I can think of, not the only thing, there are lots of things we can do. So one of the things that you mentioned to me, Anthony, was 100 Black Men in London.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd heard of them, but I wasn't actively following them. So I reached out to them. And I think, like Ify was saying, it's really important to get men on board.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot do this on our own. It will only go so far. But like building a community around us. How many of you actually even know your neighbors?
Mm-hmm.
How many of us in London do you know what I mean? So like for me, when I moved we have to be more proactive, because we can say, yes, we need community, if Auntie Titty lived down the road and all this stuff. And it's funny and it's sweet, but what are we doing to actually make that happen?
Yeah.
I mean, when I moved here, I just realized no one was going to talk to me unless I made that first move. So I actually had to knock on my neighbors' doors and just introduce myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad I did that, because then that, a little bit of community starts to form.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we have to be more proactive in getting to know who is in our neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
As much as we're isolated, they're probably just as isolated too, and are probably craving a community. There's also, just like on a practical level, when I was followed by that man a few weeks ago, I didn't even think to report it to the police. I don't know why. Because I know someone had told me about that. I would have said, did you report it to the police? But I was so busy, and Anthony, I was telling you I've been so busy at work, and it was just one of those things. It triggered something in me. I was upset, I was pissed off, because I was like, now I can't even go to the gym without being scared.
So if you don't mind me asking, like, what did you do in that situation? How did you sort of, distract them or make them go away? Or like, what advice would you have for other women that's in, and I'm sure there's lots of them that are in that situation, you're just trying to get somewhere and there's someone following you. So like you said, yes, you think about calling the police, but maybe afterwards, in the moment, you're probably scared, annoyed.
In the moment, you run as fast as you can.
Mm-hmm.
If that's a possibility for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, it's sad, because like we talk about being hyper vigilant or whatever, and then when you let your guard down, because I was listening to my music, and that's just the way I love to unwind, and I think it's relatively safe where I live. So I'm listening to my music and I'm just like having a great time singing to myself. And then he literally just looked at me just a few seconds too long, or maybe even a fraction of a second too long. But my gut instinct said, that was a bit weird. I don't know why, but it's weird. But I carried on walking, listening to my music. And it was only like maybe half a minute later, I thought, you know what, let me turn around, because I don't like the way he looked at me. And then when I turn around, I realize he's right behind me. And then when I look at him, I'm almost, because one thing I've learned from, I don't know, the internet and people talking to people who've been in situations like that is, don't look scared. So I looked at him in the eyes, because I was just like freeze mode. I was really scared, but I pretended to be really confident. I looked him in the eyes and tried to make my eyes bigger, tried to look scary. And he looked at me and then just pretended to look around as if he was lost or something. And at that point I thought, God, I realized we were the only ones there suddenly.
Oh God.
And it was a really long path in the park. And suddenly it looked really dark and dangerous when it never did, So at that point I was like, I can't carry on this route. It's too long. There's no one here. I need to find a side like road, which I did. And I completely legged it and I was fine. But honestly, I don't know what to say to women who are in that situation. Run if you can. if you can't make as much noise as possible, I mean, some people say shout fire because that's when you'll get other people coming, but who can remember to say fire in that situation, you know?
And
But
again, it's whether people will be, you know,
Come to your
will
aid.
actually come to your aid. Because, yeah, I mean, I know there's situations where, like you were saying, if you were mugged, I got mugged, but it's a day. And there were people around, and I was screaming, and people didn't do anything.
I'm sorry that
So,
happened. Wow.
yeah, I mean, it was a while ago, but yeah, it's, you know, if fire is a thing that works and people will come for that, then I think it's a good
But
a
like
good word
following
to
up,
have.
yeah, but I mean, it's always the onus is on us, right? How do we protect ourselves? How do we?
Yeah.
But like going back to the only good thing that came out of this situation is I was on the neighborhood. I don't know if you guys know is it the Neighbor app?
Nextdoor app. I was just thinking, yeah, that's pretty good actually.
That's it. So the Nextdoor app, I just see this notification a day later, and this woman saying, was it a day or two later? I can't remember. This woman saying, there was a young girl who was listening to her music on her way home after school, and this man was following behind her. And she described this guy that had followed me, like, or at least he fit the description: white, 30s to 40s, medium to slim to medium build. And I'm like, oh my God, like, is this really happening? Is it the same guy? So then I started speaking to this woman. A lot of people started interacting with her. Another one was like, my God, I was followed by like a guy fitting the same description. And so because of that, it prompted me to report this to the police.
Good.
And B, it's now like, so now some of these women and I are talking and saying, how can we get together and make sure that our neighborhoods are safe? And some of these men on these, like there are lots of great men out there who also feel really powerless when they hear these things and get really upset. And some of these men were saying like, what can we do? You know, I'm happy to support in any way. A lot of them were just so upset that this is happening in their community. And one of them, I think Anthony, I mentioned in the group chat, had said, if anyone doesn't have a male companion or friend and feels really uncomfortable or vulnerable walking in the evenings, I'm more than happy to escort these women. And I mean, when I read that, I was like, oh my God, how nice. Yes, we need more men like that. And then there was another thought of, hang on a second. What do you deserve? And he's utilizing this situation. But it's so sad. And Anthony, I remember you saying, God, it's so sad that you even have to think that way.
Think like that, yeah.
But we do. But I mean, what I'm trying to say is there are people who are willing to get on board. We need to utilize apps like this app in order like to create a community, because otherwise, I think if you're anything like me, you'll feel overwhelmed thinking, how do I save the world? Because this is a universal problem. But how about we start small, really small, and then see what happens from there?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is, it's exactly that, is where do you start with one? Whatever it is that you can do wherever you are, do that. Don't feel that it's not big enough. Don't feel that it's not a grand enough gesture. Don't feel like it's not going to help enough people. Like I say, if we can help one person, that's one more person that's being helped than they are now. And so everything that we can do, and I've just been making notes about these things. So I guess really I don't think this is really a talk that can be summarized, but I definitely would like to say that, you know, if you have thoughts about what we can do, if you are doing things in your own neighborhood or in your own community that you feel is working, please let us know. Please drop comments on this post so that other people can start to get ideas, connect with people, reach out to us, let us know what you're doing, let us know your thoughts, let us know how we can get involved, let us have the information so that we can post it. And then also, I know it's been mentioned a few times before already, this conversation by no means is to attack men. You know, it's not. We are very, very clear that there are a lot of very good men. There are a lot of very good women, and there are also the opposites of both genders. So we're not trying to pigeonhole or stereotype men, especially Black men, in any kind of way. But what I would be really, really, really keen for is for men who are, you know, parents or siblings, you know, relatives of women who've been in these kind of situations? How are you supporting them? You know, what is it that they needed to get through that situation? What's even your viewpoint on this?
Yeah.
Are there men out there who have struggled, you know, with harassment in their own way? Because it's not just, you know, men who harass women, women harass men too.
It's true.
And, you know, they can't always get out of this situation. And because they're seen as men, because they're seen as these strong people, they're less likely to be believed. And that can also have impact. So, you know, whatever you can add, please just add to this conversation. It doesn't matter how big or how small. The aim is to put this information out there so that someone can take it away and find a way to make it useful, to make it valuable, to do something to help people within their community. So again, if you're watching, please do put your comments there, #replay, do reach out, let us know what your thoughts are on this conversation. Ladies, do you have any closing thoughts?
Awet, I'll let you go first.
No, I was going to say, no, I don't. But it's just been a pleasure to speak on the subject, because I think, especially with COVID, we're all so isolated and thinking about these things individually. So thank you, Anthea, for the opportunity to talk about it. And thank you, Ify, for being there, even though I can't see your face.
No, so I'm going to blame the baby this time around. It won't happen next time.
See, this is where it starts. You blame the kids, yeah?
It has to be dark for him to go to sleep, isn't it? Yeah, I think Anthea summarized really well. I think it all, you know, really this has to start from conversation. You know, I think us just talking about it, there might be lots of other people, or even just one person, you know, that's gone through this and hopefully can take away something. So, you know, hopefully, you know, we're at least starting a conversation, helping to discuss, you know, what are the positive things that we can put in place to help here. So I'm guessing that, you know, this might be one of many conversations, depending on what comes back. But Awet, thank you so much for coming to speak to us.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you both. It's just been such an enlightening evening. It's, you know, and again, I think even from my perspective, the fact that, again, I think the main thing to be aware of is that when we have these conversations, just be aware that it may trigger things that people have kept dormant within them for some time. And so we also have to be prepared to support them past the current issue that's being faced. You know, we have contacts with, you know, people who are doing really wonderful things for women. We need to start looking at people who are doing things for men in terms of getting them into counseling, trying to get them a session. There should be no stigma attached to that. We've all been through so much, but the most important thing is to talk about it. And if you don't have anybody to talk to, there are definitely places that you can go. And we're going to start to look at what those places might be. So again, if you're watching this, if you know of places where men or women who are feeling unsafe, are maybe the victims of abuse, verbal, sexual, whatever, if you know of any organizations who support people like that, please drop those links into the comments or reach out to us, send them to us through our direct messenger, and we'll get all of that information put out to anybody and everybody who may want to hear it. So thank you again, ladies. We are the Up Move, and we're just trying to see if we can help basically rebuild community and bring us back together and share the knowledge and information that we've all already got within us to help us all continue to grow and elevate. So again, thank you very much for this, ladies, and we will be speaking to you soon.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.